Quotes from E.M. Bounds. From the Kindle, Deep Christian Quotes and Bible Verses. First quote. Paul's attitude on this question illustrates his humility, and his deep insight into the spiritual forces which project the gospel. More than this, it teaches a lesson for all times, that if Paul was so dependent on the prayers of God's saints to give his ministry success, how much greater the necessity that the prayers of God's saints be centered on the ministry of today. Second quote. It is impossible for the preacher to keep his spirit in harmony with the divine nature of his high calling, without much prayer. That the preacher by dint of duty and laborious fidelity, to the work and routine of the ministry, can keep himself in trim and fitness, is a serious mistake. Even sermon-making, incessant and taxing as an art, as a duty, as a work, or as a pleasure, will engross and harden, will estrange the heart, by neglect of prayer, from God. The scientist loses God in nature. The preacher may lose God in his sermon. Third quote. Prayer is the one prime eternal condition by which the Father is pledged to put the Son in possession of the world. Christ prays through his people. Had there been importunate, universal, and continuous prayer by God's people, long ere this the earth had been possessed for Christ. Fourth quote. The soul which has come into intimate contact with God in the silence of the prayer chamber, is never out of conscious touch with the Father. The heart is always going out to him, in loving communion, and the moment the mind is released from the task upon which it is engaged, it returns as naturally to God, as the bird does to its nest. Fifth quote. The stream of praying cannot rise higher than the fountain of living. Sixth quote. The central significance of prayer is not in the things that happen as results, but in the deepening intimacy and unhurried communion with God, at his central throne of control in order to discover a sense of God's need, in order to call on God's help to meet that need. Thanks.